Hey, good morning. Good Wednesday morning. We're over the hump out of a holiday week. Just as a reminder, you are joining, I guess we're going to with the pre-huddle. The month of December, we're doing a little fun morning gathering at 8:30. We've officially announced that starting Monday, January 5th, the Huddle with yours truly, Dan Turrentine, and the greatest new addition to any show, Rachael Bade, will be kicking off right on January 5th.
By the way, can I just say Katie Armstrong, who helps produce this, that countdown clock is outstanding.
That was
we need that little color in there, but we could, like, for how, Valentine's, hearts can come down. Like, well done, Katie.
I don't know. I kind of felt like I was dozing off because it was so calming.
No, it's like before the game. It's like you're getting ready for the game. Like, here we go.
All right. Look, let me just run through. This is going to be an interesting day for House Republicans and Senate Republicans. Obviously, a lot of talk. We'll get to it. There'll be some kind of meetings today. And then on the president's schedule, he's got a photo opportunity with White House interns, and then making an announcement later this afternoon at 2:30 p.m.
Do you guys have any sense what that, another billionaire contributing, or what do we have today?
Yeah, it's like, hey, what do you have? Somebody else comes in and says, I got $7 billion. I'll give you a free account and a car. Maybe
I'll
that's
do that and raise
Oprah's going to announce a free car. Everybody, you get a car. You get a car.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. I haven't heard anything, but I think, for what it's worth, Dan, I think that this is going to be interesting. I think you're going to see a lot more of these on the schedule where there's something, a placeholder to make an announcement, and then keep it close press, and then if it's bring in the pool. Anyway, look, real quick, I think today that we want to talk a little bit about the Tennessee special, what this means for the midterms, recap of the cabinet meeting, the latest on Venezuela, sort of what went on yesterday in this conference meeting between Elise Stefanik and Speaker Johnson, and then we'll get to what's going on with the progressive wing of the left. But before that, Rachael, you announced last night you're launching a whole new newsletter. Tell us a little bit about what it is, where we can find it, and what you hope to do.
Yes, of course. So twice a week, starting this week, I'm going to be doing a newsletter on Substack called The Inner Circle. And basically, this is me tracking power here in Washington, sort of writing about what's happening behind the scenes, what sort of insiders here in DC are chattering about, who's up, who's down. I'll just say these are the types of palace intrigue stories that have always fascinated me. I think I mentioned in the first show that if I have any bias, it's a bias against sniffing out if there's drama happening, or if or what insiders and leaders are sort of thinking before other people know what they're going to do. So I hope you subscribe. If you go to rachelbade.com, and there's an extra A in my name, guys, so spell it right or you won't be able to subscribe. RACHAELBADE. It's free. And I am hoping you guys come in and support me. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Well, one thing that's funny, I think it took me a while because I'm slow on technology. A Substack is just a newsletter. It's just the platform. And there's a lot of people who called me all the time and be like, what's a Substack? And I'm like, it's just, so same thing with SeanSpicer.com is just, but it's on the Substack platform, but yeah, same thing. So I'm glad
it's on the Google, it's on the Substack.
Right. It's on
and if you sign up, it's going to come to your inbox. So you'll get it in the afternoons or when I have a scoop or something like that. And then obviously I'll talk about some of that stuff here on the show.
Okay. I like it if I can get a phone call and
text alerts.
Right.
Yes,
right.
First edition. But anyway, enough of that. Let's go to the news. So last night, Matt Van Epps obviously defeated the Democrat in Tennessee, Afghan Bain, by 9 points. But yes, this is a bigger margin that some people were particularly worried about, especially on the right. But it's not obviously rainbows and kittens for the party right now. There are warning signs for the midterms, considering how much Republicans had to spend in this race to win against the, quote, AOC of Tennessee in a 22-point district where Trump won by 22 points last time around. So just to kick it off, Sean, give us a little bit of sense of how you're reading this. How bad was it for the party? What do you take away from it?
Yeah, I was out last night doing some holiday partying, just for sourcing purposes only.
Strictly business. Yeah,
strictly business. And look, I think I've said this all along. Every election, there should be a lesson learned, good or bad. Like you should, in the military, at the end of an exercise, you do 3 up, 3 down. What went well, what didn't? I think on the what went well, the Republicans heard the alarm bell. Speaker Johnson gets a lot of credit. He got in there. He spent all day. They rallied the troops. The NRCC did a great job. I talked to some pretty high up party sources yesterday. They were expecting a 5 to 7 point win, which I thought was pretty low. They felt comfortable. One thing that people have to understand, and I dealt with this a lot when I was at the NRCC, is when the party gets outside the margin of error in a race, meaning they know they're going to win or they're going to lose, they either cut bait and say, stop spending money, or we're not spending more money to win. If you know you're going to win a race by 6, 7 points, then you don't keep spending money so you win by 10 or 12 just so you can change the narrative. A win's a win. And when you're talking about hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. And so people have to keep that in mind. Was it less than 22? Yes, of course. But Trump outperformed the district anyway. I think realistically, you should have seen a 15-point win would have been probably more in line. But also look at the turnout, 178, 180,000 people, right? I think when you dig into those numbers, you're going to see a lot of Republicans not
turning out.
A lot of Republicans not turning out, not feeling the need to do this. I will say you got a new RNC chairman, Joe Gruters. He was down there. This is not traditionally something that the NRC that you would leave entirely the NRCC, but I think he gets a lot of credit for being down there, for making sure that the RNC had their eye on the ball. And so this was good from a fire drill exercise. Are we ready to go? Do we understand the landscape? Do we know what it's going to take? Are our metrics good? So again, based on what I saw yesterday and where the party thought they were, they outperformed. Is that a good sign? Not necessarily, because not everyone's going to get a couple $1 million.
Yeah. So
yeah, I thought, but I want to hear Dan first. Dan, your turn.
Yeah. So I mean, look, that's the issue. I think to some extent it's the status quo coming out of this, which is Democrats are cautiously optimistic and Republicans are nervous, right? There wasn't the freak out of a 2-point victory or, heaven forbid for them, a loss. I think the challenge is, if you're at the DCCC or the NRCC, you were thinking going in 4 months ago, we have 20 seats that we're going to arm wrestle over, right? It's a very small playing field, because that is basically all the seats that were under 6 points, all the Republican seats under 6 points in 2022, 2024. Now there's a person on from PBS put up a great set of numbers this morning on that I retweeted. There are 15 Republican members of Congress that won between 7 and 12 points. Those seats now are going to be at the committees. You're a frontliner, right? We need to be concerned about you. So if I have a budget, let's say of $100 million that I was only going to spend on 20, that budget now needs to go to 35 people, both on the hard side at the committee, and all the outside groups are now going to be told, you need to budget some money for these. Where you get even more nervous is if that wave gets a little further on shore, people in the kind of 13 to 17 range, it's another about 15 members, come on the board. And that's where, if you're at the DCCC, you are giddy this morning, because the more targets we have, the better our odds of success. The narrower the playing field, obviously, the less so.
So
wait, just one other thing. In the Senate, if I'm Sherrod Brown this morning, I feel pretty good. Because I look at that state and think the Democrat, I mean, Sean, you were mocking it yesterday and you were right. I mean, how many candidates are going to basically trash their district in terms of like the biggest industry, country music, the hot capital or, place to be in Nashville? You get a good candidate who only lost last time by, I think it was 3.5 points, and they see these numbers, you start feeling pretty good.
No, that's the key point, is that the candidates always matter. Mechanics matter, candidates matter.
She was not a great candidate.
Was a bad candidate. I talked to a very senior person in the Biden-Harris world who said she was their last choice in that 4-way primary. And to your point, Sherrod Brown's a good candidate. He's a populist candidate. And so I would, again, the one takeaway in this is when I was at the NRCC, I had a phrase for a lot of older members: political atrophy. They get comfortable with a 15-point plus, district,
100%.
And they go, I don't need to worry about that. And I used to hand out potholders when I first ran, and everybody would come to my post office events at the old, giddy up. They've got to remember this: the time and the environment has changed. The get out the vote effort, the reliance on new media opportunities and influencers to really get the word out for you, as opposed to relying on a consultant that says, hey, just buy 1,500 or 2,000 points in the last 3 weeks, is not going to do it anymore.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about the messaging, though? Because one thing that Matt Van Epp said last night in his sort of thank you speech was that something along the lines of running with Trump is how you win. But there's been a couple of good reporters who have sort of noted that he actually didn't talk a lot about Trump in his campaign. I know Trump came in at the last minute to do that, the rally to help, get the base out, et cetera. But Amy Walter of Crook Political Report, she's very well respected on both sides of the aisle. She had this tweet a couple days ago where she asked how much of a drag is Trump for House Republicans. And she said, even in this district, a Trump 2022 district, none of the GOP ads mentioned Trump or electing a representative to keep his agenda going. Instead, they were completely attacking the Democrats saying she was radical. And she said that means Republicans going into 26 are going to be purely defensive. And that they're not going to be talking a lot about the big, beautiful bill, about, tariffs, which are obviously not very popular. I mean, Sean, what do you make of what does this mean for how Republicans are going to run in the midterms?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to be cynical, but the bottom line is this, if you go back through history, negative always wins. Like, you beat the crap out of your opponent. I mean, that's
well said, Sean.
But it's true. I mean, both sides. I don't think
yeah.
You run on the negative, and negative moves. Positive rarely does anything. And so I don't think it's a shock when you go in and you message test on your poll, like what moves the needle, what changes. Again, there's issues that people agree on. Do you agree that this issue is important? Yes or no? Okay. Will it change your vote? No. So there's things that people care about, right? So I care about sunshine. Is that going to change my vote? No. And so what they've done and figured out, okay, if we can make the Democrat completely unacceptable, that's a greater motivator to vote, or it turns away a lot of the independents. If you can turn out your Republicans, they'll turn out their Democrats. How do you get that group in the middle? And the negative is always going to trump the positive. So I'm not surprised by it, because I don't think that going out and saying, I think two things can be true at the same time. Matt Van Epp said the right thing, which is, it's not like he distanced himself from Trump. It's just that the polling suggested if you really want to, open that gap up, you have to make her unacceptable to independents.
I think the challenge, though, Rachel, is, and this kind of goes to our next thing, which is both sides hit the affordability. Now, Van Epp went on taxes. Good, smart strategy there. The problem is our party, the Democratic Party, is rallying around this affordability issue because, as you say, Sean, negative works, which is you guys own it, right? You said you'd bring it down, etc. You then have Trump once again in a cabinet meeting literally saying affordability is a fake issue. Yeah. And if I'm a Democrat, I am cutting that and putting it in ads up and down the world. You are hurting, and he says it's fake. I know it's real. But Sean, if Republican candidates in debates have to get up there, in this instance, he said the right thing, which is he thanked Trump. You got to kiss the ring.
Right.
But if you're in a debate, you are going to have to say, well, I disagree with the president.
No, you don't have to say you don't say I disagree with the president. I think you can say, I know people are, I've said this for weeks now.
Is he right? That's what the D's going to say. They're going to cut the person off.
But again,
really,
you don't.
Is it right?
Yeah. Any smart politician is going to say, look, here's what I know. The people of California's 42nd district are clearly, need to do better, and we need to work harder to give them more of their hard-earned money, and we need to lower their tax. Blah, blah, blah. The reality is that I understand what the president's saying, right? Which is, for 4 years, we were told inflation is transitory, nothing's happening. And now suddenly you guys care about costs. Like, all of these Democrats that stood behind Biden.
Well, we cared about it the last 2 years.
No, I get it. But what I'm saying is,
because of it.
I think there's two things, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I think that Republicans need to address the issue. As I've said before, they need to say, our policies are moving in the right direction. We have more to do. But I understand the president's view, which is, you got to be kidding me. For 4 years, you sat behind Biden. You said that there was no problem, that inflation wasn't an issue. It was transitory. There was nothing to see here. And now suddenly all of you sane people, when inflation is where it's always been now, it's coming down. And you now go, now we have to worry about.
That's the problem with that, is it came down under Biden. So when he came in, I just think, look, that's going to be a tough sell. But I mean, we can move on here if we want.
Yeah, I want to continue to talk about the affordability issue here, well, in the coming days, et cetera. But let's move on to the cabinet meeting. As you mentioned, Dan, so it was like 2 hours. I didn't watch, just to confess, I didn't watch the whole thing. I saw clips and pieces of it. But there does seem to be a lot of little news bits that came out of it. The president teased that he could strike on Venezuela in terms of land, not just, the boats. He suggested that he will, in fact, use that force to oust Maduro, right? Hegseth said he did not personally see survivors who, survived that first boat strike before the second boat strike. When we're talking about what happened there, he cited the fog of war in sort of defending what happened, saying like that he actually didn't even see the second strike when it came to that controversy we've been talking about for the past couple of days. Dan, you were texting with us saying that you had a number of thoughts about this cabinet meeting. So why don't we start with you on this?
I mean, I think, look, Sean, you always talk about this as a comms person. What are the headlines that you want to generate from a press event? And Trump is usually the master at puts out the red ball, puts out and we're all talking about it for 2 or 3 days, right? He owns the news cycle. When I look at that thing yesterday, look, I know, like, I tweeted about others about him, like, falling asleep. Like, oh, okay, there's a little bit of a side, like, gossipy thing. But it was his affordability comment, right? Fake news, kind of, again, driving into it. Calling the Somalis in Minnesota garbage, and all they do is bitch, which, it fires up some people. But House members in competitive seats, that's not the stuff they want to have to answer about, right? It's the stuff that swing voters kind of cringe with Trump when he goes there. And as you said, Rachel, the idea that, like, we may be imminently about to invade Venezuela, which is not, as of today, it is a 70-30 issue against. So I look at that cabinet meeting, and he's been struggling the last few weeks. And I wouldn't, as a Republican, if I'm a House member, senator, anyone, even in the Trump White House, the headlines coming out of that were not good for us. Other than maybe he sat next to Pete Hegseth and the president said he's doing a great job.
There was some news on immigration, both in terms of Kristi Noem, talking about, but it was interesting that this is the first one that I thought two things takeaway wise. One is, to your point, Dan, like what's the headline or headlines you want coming out, right? And then secondly, you do this big Michael Dell, Susan Dell announcement. Billions of dollars,
which is a great thing, by the way.
Great thing, that is right? Awesome. And so, to my point is, why wouldn't you separate the two things? Have one day, have one the other, or have one week, have one the other. Yeah. The other thing is, when I used to be a committee comms director on the Hill, we would sit down and war game out the hearing. So let's just say there's 10 members on your Republican side, and I'd say, okay, Congressman Bade, we're going to lead. You're going to get the first two questions. We want you to ask the witness about, A, B, and C. And then Congressman Turrentine, you're going to ask second. So we want you to do D and D. And we would script out the hearing. So what are the themes? What are the, right? I felt like at some point, if the president wants to do this, he is so good at orchestrating that they almost need to go through the cabinet and say, okay, what are you, like, pre-script it, right? If you're going to do this, because it really has become a show.
Yeah.
Right. Which is fine. I as I've said, I enjoy them. I actually feel like, and I've talked to a couple of cabinet members last night, I feel like that when you go, you actually get to hear what your government is doing for you, right? As a Trump supporter, because I feel like there's an accountability, there's a transparency aspect. Great. But it's almost like Susie Wiles and Stephen Chung, the comms director, should be sitting down and going through with each of the cabinet members and saying, here are your 3 top lines that we want to make sure you hit, so that it's on message. So what are those headlines coming out? So you almost are pre-scripting a cabinet hearing the way I just described a committee hearing.
But it kind of feels like they already do that. And even if it was perfect, even if their sort of talking points were perfect, the challenge is when the president says something like affordability is, not a real issue. It's a Democratic hoax. Dan, to go back to your point about him calling people garbage. Who was it he called garbage?
Somalis. He called the Somalis in Minnesota.
And then I mean, I kind of feel like people are used to the president in terms of his taunting now. I mean, how long has he been in the political, circles? Like, how long have people sort of been watching and listening to him? It sort of feels like it's baked in. I remember way back when he was president the first time around. I think it was 2017, and he told the 4 members of the squad, the self-described Democratic Socialists, to go back to their countries, even though they were Americans. That was a huge. I remember that everybody was freaking out. Like Republicans were like, "We don't talk like that." That just people just don't react like that anymore because this is
not only that, but I felt like he was
here's
almost baiting a discussion about you want to talk. You got $1 billion+ of fraud under Tim Walz's watch in Minnesota, and I felt like it was almost, to your point, Dan, like there was almost a sense of like, really, do you want to get into that debate? Do you want to be talking about fraud in Minnesota under Tim Walz's watch when his own employees at the Health and Human Services, like there was a bit of like, I maybe I wouldn't have gone that far, but I felt like to some degree, you were asking about whether members want to get into that. I was like, do members want to defend that? Because I don't know that I would.
Well, that's so. I mean, look, I agree with both of you, but I'm going to add the but, which is it is baked into Trump. But when Trump does that middle 5-10% cringes. They hate it. So yes, it's nothing new, but it is a reminder for a guy who's struggling. You don't want those cringe reminders, right? You want to have it on the other, because to your point, Sean, that is what a Republican member would like to do, which is pivot towards, look, okay, I don't agree with this style. It's not what I would have done, but let's talk about what's going on in Minnesota. It's outrageous. But every time they have to be like either, and as you know, half of them will be like, I didn't hear about that. Sorry, I'll get back to you when I see the rest of it. Yeah. And just on the Democratic side, it just gives us a chance to kind of like have something else to focus on. But
anyway. I will say this. I'll go back to what Rachel said at the beginning. Look, this is all baked in. I mean, Trump is Trump. And part of the reason that people love the guy is because he says stuff that no one else would ever say.
Well, and the base loves it.
Right. But I'm just saying, sure, right. But he's also gotten, I mean, look, I just.
You won by a little, you lost by a little, you won by a little.
But I'm just telling you who he is. It's not,
I agree.
And so anyway, but you did mention, the Hegseth in Venezuela. And I think it was interesting. I felt like the ball got moved forward yesterday. And what I mean by that is these guys, like, at some point, and I had an amazing conversation with Tim Parlatore last night on the actual law and how things work. I mean, like, who is a military JAG officer that's represented both Hegseth and Trump on the civilian side. And like, when you actually go through this, and this is why I think when Admiral Bradley comes up to the Hill and starts talking, this issue is going to suddenly pivot away, because to Pete's point about the fog of war, like, what this comes down legally to is intent. Did the commander at the time, when they're going after what they perceive to be, and Tim walked through a whole bunch of World War II examples where you keep firing at ships and torpedo during, we were going after the Japanese. If we were still going after the ship and people were collateral damage, then legally that's completely within keeping. If you literally targeted the people, which I just in my wildest dreams cannot believe, right, that Admiral Bradley or anybody next to him, because again, the way the decision gets made, you got an intel guy on your right that said, sir, that's left. This is what we got as a target. And you got a JAG on your right, or vice versa. And the JAG saying, based on the intel, we're comfortable with that shot or not. But Dan, the admiral's not going to sit there and say, well, gosh, we don't have the intel and we don't have the legal authority, so I'm going to go anyway. Not going to happen.
Dan, if the admiral comes in and sort of testifies, I mean, it's going to be behind closed doors when he's talking to lawmakers. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little leaking. But if he comes in and he says, look, the intent was completely infrastructure related. It had nothing to do with survivors. Like, does that ring true to you?
Yeah, I think as a party, then we have to be careful, because it's one thing. Hegseth is, the public view of him is what it is. He's a better kind of foil. You don't want a military officer in uniform with their, stripes on their arm, so to speak, who, as we discussed yesterday, has a sterling reputation.
Oh, yeah.
If he says, no, everything was, properly followed, chain of command, this was legal, as a Democrat, I'd be really careful. I would be more willing to salute and say, got it. Thanks for briefing us.
Yeah, you got to pivot, right?
Let me
you
trash
can go
you.
after you can go after Pete. He's the civilian head. You go after Admiral Bradley at your own. I mean,
It's a very different reaction.
Totally.
Pete's an easy target for the right, or not for the right, for the left. But we do have to keep in mind, though, just to sort of flag this for watchers and listeners, even if this sort of dies down a little on Thursday, there is another bit of news that is going to be coming up Thursday, and that is the Pentagon Inspector General report on, quote, Signalgate. Is going to be released sometime, a public version of it. Some of it will be redacted. And just to remind people, this is a investigation into what happened last spring when a bunch of sort of war plans, Pete Hegseth shared a bunch of sort of war plans on a Signal message with a bunch of other top officials. There were concerns like, could, like secret information be, jeopardized? The administration came in and said all this stuff had been declassified, so there wasn't a risk. But this is going to be sort of the official investigation of what happened there. And I'm just curious to see what it says. Like, is it as damning as Democrats in the media seem to think it's going to be? Or is there sort of a more saline version that is put out?
My guess,
I mean, I imagine
I'm going to guess it's milquetoast, which is, it's going to try to thread a needle, which is to say, while the secretary didn't violate any particular things, it would have been better had he used official channels. We understand the constraints. However, in the future, I mean, it's going to be why. I mean,
it's just going to be embarrassing, right? It was a sloppy, embarrassing thing, what they did and what, kind of how Hegseth talked and where he did it. And I just think for a guy who's, in the bullseye, again, not just with Democrats, but there are a lot of Republicans who didn't like when he was nominated, who held their nose to confirm him and have been looking for excuses to try to push him out. And this is just going to resurface it. And on some level, as we can kind of transition to the next topic, you also have this idea of, are we going to invade Venezuela? Yeah. And that, again, here comes the, we've always talked about this. Hegseth is great at, the DEI purging, and we're, it's Department of War, not Department of Defense, and like kind of all of these like optics. And they're not just optics. There's obviously serious substance behind it. But now a question of like, are we invading a country? This is something that supposedly the rationale is because it's a drug haven. Obviously, that could be true and apply to a lot of other countries. So is this, a one-off? Are we for regime change? They seem to not want to say it, but like directly, but we want the president of Venezuela out. So then like, are we putting somebody in after this? Do we know who would come next? And I think, Sean, this is just the last thing I'll say is like, this is another one of those issues where Trump didn't run on this.
No. And I will say this is not going to, like, the Laura Loomers and Steve Bannons of the world. I don't know where Steve's going to come down on this, but Laura and people have been saying, hey, how is this America first? And where I think the administration needs to inject some additional messaging is to be talking about the geopolitical aspect of Russia and China. Like, this is a big problem in our backyard, to have a massive influence of both Russia and so for all of you Russia hawks out there who are so worried about what the administration's doing, you might want to worry about our own backyard. And for all you people worried about China, same thing. And I think that that to me is another area where they need to up it, because just to say we need regime change because there's drugs that we can probably interdict for the most part by attacking boats. And by the way, they've been look at the number that have gone down. On that front, they can claim a big success, but you can't, if you really want to do this, I think making people understand that it's much bigger than drugs is important. And,
but where do you guys see the whole like Rubio Vance thing? I mean, Vance went out on X, kind of tried to lay the groundwork that this is America first and like in our interest. Most accounts, Rubio has been driving this, kind of the focus on the backyard. Like, we need to deal with some of these governments. I mean, this is just one of those, like, we go in to a jungle in South America to get rid of drugs and a regime. Like, I'm going to take, it's an honest and true statement. I mean, Sean, the Chinese have military operations in Patagonia, in Argentina. They've got raw material deals that they signed in the last 20 years.
I get it.
Are we now with our military going? I mean, this to me is just like, this wasn't on the bingo card.
No. And that's why I'm telling you, I don't think it's going to go over well.
Yeah.
And for a million reasons. One, we've been talking about whether you want to call it affordability, the economy, what personal economic security, whatever. The bottom line is, it's pretty hard to say, well, this is a priority when you're hurting or you want to make more money. Secondly, to your point, the whole ethos of America First is to ending forever wars and intervention and blah, blah, blah. So the president and his team is going to have to step up the messaging if they want people not to go, what are we doing here? And I think that's important. But
as the president likes to say, America First is what I say.
What I say.
And I could choose to
right on that.
You asked about Bannon. I'm pretty sure Bannon has been against this as well. So
I would have assumed so, but never. I just don't until I ask Steve. I don't. I generally don't.
Maria Salazar, Congresswoman from Florida, she was on CNN, Republican, making the case for this, for going in, as she would say, going in. And she obviously talked about, drugs. She talked about the regime being sort of a threat to the United States, but she also talked about oil, and prices. And I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been Dana Bash at CNN who was interviewing her. The interviewer was like, "Are you saying we should do this for oil?" And I remember, back like decades ago when people were talking about Iraq specifically. It was like, "Oh my gosh, we did this for oil," blah blah blah. When people were criticizing, now it's actually leaning in. She was leaning into that. I'm curious what you made.
No, this is again. I don't care unless you can say that there's like a pot of gold. I mean, even then, I just don't. This is antithetical to what America First is all about. And that's why I'm saying either you need to up your messaging game, right? Because you need to go out there and start selling this and explaining it, or it's not going to end well. And I don't think there's any in between.
I'm writing some of these quotes down, Sean, for my newsletter today, just so you know.
I mean, this is a political show. I'll just say for Democrats, this kind of chaos is the fact that Republicans are openly starting to say on the Hill, what are we doing here with Venezuela? For us, I think you just let the circular firing squad develop. I mean, you're just like, this is not, where does this stop now? Like once you go in, you're in. So we'll have to. And by the way, you're also asking someone, would you be okay if your child dies in going into Venezuela? Like, is that a worthy cause? We all said no American soldiers in Ukraine because people didn't think that was worth.
Oh, I don't know that. I mean, look, I don't.
They wouldn't do boots.
Yeah, they're not. I don't think they'll do boots. They might do.
They have 15,000 troops stationed in port. They have 15,000 troops down there stationed off the shore. I don't think they're there to check the water. You might do special forces that go in but you're not going to have a follow-on force. Special advisors. I mean,
no, but by the way, just to be clear, Dan, I agree with you and Rachel. I mean, like you start putting serious boots on the ground beyond like, a couple SEAL teams or some special forces, you're going to have a problem. Because the visual of it, right, is not what you want. And
either urban fighting or jungle fighting.
Yep. All right. Well, there was another little. Speaking of fights, as I was out last night, one of the things that I heard, and I hadn't paid that much attention. I mean, during the House conference meeting, apparently, New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik kind of went after Mike Johnson, and I
did it publicly, Sean.
Yeah.
On Twitter.
Yeah. Okay. Well. It's okay. Yes. I just, again, and I'm going to tell you this, I've always said, and I'm sure Dan feels the same way about his side, but like red on red just is not helpful. Right. And I don't, and it's
at the leadership level,
And also like I said this to a couple members last night and I've said it publicly. So, but I'm like Johnson and Speaker Johnson has had his plate full. Like I'm not trying to, he was down there doing yeoman's work in Tennessee, right? He was on the ground.
With a 2-seat majority. I mean, that's also like...
No, but I mean, like, I'll give the guy credit. Like, there's one thing to quarterback it from D.C., which is what you normally do. That guy was on the ground for a day. Like, and he had his team out. Like, okay, so I'm not trying to pile on. That being said, this is his come to Jesus moment where he needs to get the conference in a room and say, guys, knock it off. Knock it off.
He doesn't have political capital.
But he has to. It has to be a team speech, a coach speech, right? Which is, hey guys, we got a 1-seat majority. Here's the team is Trump. If you guys say you support Donald Trump, then knock it off because I can't do this every day. I can't. If we're gonna battle each other, he's going to get impeached again. He's going to have a ton of investigations. Do it. He's got to be a coach.
Stefanik would argue, not the lady defending the lady here, but she would argue that she was pushing for a provision that is a Trump position. The provision was just to get in the weeds for a second. The National Defense Reauthorization, basically, that they have to pass every year. She wanted to put in a provision requiring the FBI to notify Congress when they're opening a counterintelligence investigation into a candidate or member of Congress. Now, obviously, this has been a big problem with Republicans during the Biden years.
Sensitive issue.
And she wants that in law, that they have to notify folks on the Hill if they're being investigated. Big priority for MAGA, big priority for Republicans. And, according to her and what she has said, like, he took that provision out, and she clearly felt the need to go public and put pressure on him to put that provision back in. But there's a backstory here that people should know about. And that is that Elise Stefanik is probably the one member who has been screwed over the most this year when it comes to the Republican majority and what has happened to her. She was a member of Republican leadership on the Intelligence Committee, sort of rising star. She gets nominated when the president,
to be UN ambassador.
Ambassador. And her nomination gets slow walked because Johnson is complaining. He's got this slim majority. He doesn't want to lose members. We got to pass the big, beautiful bill. We got to wait for the right time for her to leave and to fill that seat, because that means an even slimmer margin. And then ultimately the president revokes her nomination because of that slim margin that the speaker was complaining about. She blames him for losing that position. She stepped away from leadership. She stepped away from the House Intelligence Committee. And so she's clearly very angry. And by the way, even though she stayed in Congress because of that slim margin, other members since then have resigned for various personal reasons. And she's still there, and she didn't get the dream job. So look, I have some sympathy for Elise Stefanik. Well, things have not gone well for her this year.
And to turn the screwdriver deeper, so it's being reported that Johnson, that she wanted back on the Intelligence Committee, and Johnson was hesitant and said, well, we've already filled the seat. And then she wanted back in leadership. In other words, all right, if you guys are going to say I can't leave because we need to protect the majority, then I want to go back to everything I had. And Johnson tried to block it. Yeah. So she is pissed from six ways to Sunday.
Again, but this is again where I would argue Johnson needs to be the coach, right?
Yeah.
And that was probably not, again, I don't know entirely the back and forth. Not disputing any of the TikTok. What I'm saying is, was some of this prohibitive, I can't put you back on, or was it I don't want to put you back on? I don't know. So I do think that
where the one thing though, as someone who, I've said this publicly, I love Nancy Pelosi. I think she was an amazing leader, but regardless of what you think of her politics. Sean, the fact is, I don't think Johnson, Rachel, you said this, is feared. Trump is feared. So if dad comes down and says, hey, knock it off, I think everybody says, I don't want to go to war with MAGA online if Trump turns it. But I can't fathom somebody going at Nancy Pelosi publicly this. And then, by the way,
AOC.
No way.
And AOC went in the penalty
even
box.
AOC, she was
now plays ball
on a lot of things to Pelosi.
No, I know.
And the fact that Johnson today gave Stefanik what she wants. If I'm another member, because it's a 2-seat majority, I throw a big enough public hissy fit, Johnson's going to back down.
Let me say this. Here's what, as you guys are talking, what's in the back of my head here? I mean, in all honesty, on the first part and the second part, the initial one a few months ago, and then the current one, I gotta believe, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I just gotta believe that Johnson at some point is back channeling this to the White House, to James Blair, the political director and deputy chief of staff over there, and saying, hey, Elise, you guys told me to pull the nomination. I pulled it. She wants back. Do you guys care? Right. And then here she is pushing for this provision, the NDAA. Do you care? Right. So on both sides, I got to believe that at some point there's at least getting a back channel. Hey, are you guys on board with this? Do you not care? Do you want me to support it or not? And so that's what is in the back of my head, which is a lot of this at the behest of the White House political operation.
Yeah, that I just don't know the answer to. But last thing I want to mention about this is just it's not just Stefanik, right? Like, so she came out and did this. There was another instance yesterday where Chip Roy was on the floor sort of demanding things and causing problems for Johnson. Anna Paulina Luna, another
By the
Republican
way,
from
not
Florida.
just Rachel, not just causing problems. They pulled down a rule and stopped. We're like, okay, we're done. Like, that's a big problem.
Like not a small problem.
Right.
And Anna Paulina, another member of Congress, a Republican, filing a discharge petition to go around leadership to force a vote on legislation banning stock trading.
Which, by the way,
which is a 90-10 issue.
The rank
you know
and
what?
file
Anna
feel
Paulina Luna,
empowered
go,
right
girl.
now. The rank and file feel empowered right now. They sent
Yep.
blood in the water. And
Yep.
this just sort of like, to go back to what Dan says, like, they feel like they can get what they want right now and sort of assert their leverage in this slim majority over Johnson. And it's just going to be a challenge for him unless the president comes in and steps in on one of these issues.
And by the way, this is another instance, assuming that this discharge petition happens, right? Because again, this is like the Epstein file release. It's a 90-10 issue, right? People want to be, you know what the problem is? Trump doesn't necessarily want this because he got exempted. You think Democrats aren't going to talk about, oh, we all support a ban. The executive branch, it has this ban except for the president and the vice president.
Right. And like, it's always
just, he doesn't want this. It's another instance of like, it's bad for Johnson. It's also bad for Trump.
But here's what I'll say. You know what this vote reminds me of? Back in 94, we took over the House, the Contract of America. Everybody said they supported term limits. And so what did the House conference do? They put up basically, a 3-pronged vote. So you could vote for 4 years or 6 years or 500 years. And then you could say you voted for something, but none of the 3 options ever got to 218. So this Stock Act, look, I've talked to a couple of members about this, and they're like, I'm for it if the following, and it's like, to me, this is a no-brainer. When I got in the White House, they said you take every stock that you own, you have to sell it, and it has to go into a qualified mutual fund. You get to still be in the stock market. Stock market goes up, you do well. Stock market goes down, you do bad, right? Rising tide lifts all boats. Yeah. These members of Congress that are, I did a show with Tim Burchett the other day. Do you realize for all this crap that we give Nancy Pelosi, she's not even in the top 10? I mean, I just, this is.
And by the way, her husband's an investment banker. Like, what he does.
10, what?
She's, for all of the, Republicans love to talk about Nancy Pelosi's stock trades, which are very good, by the way.
Oh, in terms of trading, the top 10.
Right, and how well she does. Yeah. But at the end of the day, as Tim Burchett reminded me, in his very amazing, his sort of fun, he goes, son, she's not even in the top 10. I mean,
well, and of course the irony of this is like Paul Pelosi was successful prior to this, so but where it's most egregious is the rank and file that go from being worth 200,000 to like 700,000 because, like, go back to healthcare. All the people who traded around healthcare in the financial crisis on both sides of the aisle was disgusting. It was disgusting.
I mean, Burchett, by the way, I put out clips from my show all the time, and some do well, some don't do as well. We put out this clip. Burchett told this story. He makes these things called Burchett boards, his skateboards in his garage at night. Okay. No. So you got to see this. I put it up on Instagram. It got 1.4 million views. He puts this stuff. He tells this story. He walks down to the House Ethics Committee and says, "Hey, I gave some of these boards out. They're fun. People seem to like them. They're skateboards, and they're really good. They're cool." And he said, I'd like to kind of maybe do something with this. And they said, great. You have to go out and get a business license. You have to get approval to do this. You have to do this. He goes, so let me get this straight. I can trade stocks with insider information. And I don't have to do anything. But if I want to sell a skateboard I make in my garage, I have to get approval and a business license. And they're like, yep.
Did you ask him for a skateboard, Sean?
I did. Oh, hell yeah. First of all, I love free stuff. I am a swag whore. I admit it. So I asked for everything that's free. I'll climb over 8 people to get a free T-shirt when the Caps drop them.
Yeah, you're the guy at the game who knocks the kid over to be like, give me the triple.
And I don't ever want to wear it. I just want it.
You just put it in a frame and you never use it, or what?
No, I put it in a box in a corner.
Of course.
As just the last topic here, kind of speaking on red on red. This is a little bit of blue on blue. For those who haven't seen it, rumors that Jasmine Crockett is leaning pretty strongly towards declaring next week that she is going to run in Texas for that open or in the Senate seat. There's 2 other Democrats that are, pretty good. There's a Democratic primary. Obviously, on the right, you have the primary going on for Cornyn. But I just think historically, and I always talk about this, 2006, when Chuck Schumer ran the DSCC, you had two big races where there were hot primaries: Virginia with Jim Webb and a very left candidate, and Pennsylvania. Bob Casey was pro-life. He was moderate. You had the progressives were not happy. I think there was a Planned Parenthood person out of Philadelphia who was running. And Chuck Schumer and the DSCC played extreme hardball and said, this is our candidate. They went to all the outside groups and said, you are going to run money. Emily's List or Planned Parenthood, whoever it was, took a long time to forgive Chuck Schumer. But at the end of the day, Jim Webb won in Virginia, upset Allen, and Casey won, upsetting Santorum. This time, it's the opposite. The progressives are flipping off the DSCC. They're flipping off Schumer. We've talked about Maine with Plantner and having already recruited the governor. Michigan, that primary is incredibly crowded.
You talked New Jersey last night?
Yeah, I mean, and
Jim Solomon defeating Jim McGreevey for the mayor of Jersey City. What a smackdown.
So, I mean, I think while we're talking about the right, on the left, it is, I think, one of the stories that is really kind of moving this primary season is progressives see this as their moment. And they are stepping forward in House races, Senate races, and they don't care what the DSCC. And there's no fear anymore of Chuck Schumer. And that's a problem for Chuck.
I'll tell you, the one big thing in the you mentioned, you name checked the Texas Senate primary.
Yeah.
Obviously, one of the big hits that the Cornyn people put up against like a Paxson is to say, well, gosh, you'd have a harder time keeping Texas Republican. Democrats would have a choice. You elect Jasmine Crockett as a Democratic nominee, I could win in Texas right now, and I don't live there.
I was going to say, there's been a lot of comments in our chat here about please have her run.
Oh my God, I might actually donate to her. But I do think that, by the way, it didn't get as much play for obvious reasons, but this race in New Jersey, northern New Jersey, former governor Jim McGreevey losing to a big progressive. You look at what happened in New York City, what's going on in Minneapolis, the rise of the progressives on the left, and obviously
DC mayoral. You may have a socialist now
and the thing that was fascinating to me about the Afton Bain race down in Tennessee 7 was, and I get it, don't get me wrong, but like to bring AOC into Tennessee 7 and to double down on crazy progressive. I get it. She wanted to.
And Jasmine Crockett did a call in.
To me, if I were Afton Bain, I would have said, okay, I got this. I might do some robocalls with AOC.
And Kamala Harris came in.
And then bring in try to get go west out of Nashville and north and not necessarily go crazy. I understand why she did it, but I would have done it in a very different way. And I'll tell you, that speaks to a lot of the tactics. And I think as much as we might have some warts to deal with and some family issues to discuss at dinner.
Both sides do.
Wow. This is a big one.
And the New Dems are making that point today. If it had been Bart Gordon, if it had been a moderate Democrat and it had been, Bill Clinton and Barack Obama going into campaign, not Kamala Harris, Jasmine Crockett, and AOC, we might have had a chance to actually win that race. And this goes to candidate recruitment and the party committee's kind of inability now to referee this stuff.
Hey, before we jump, I'm sorry, Rachel, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the question though is whether leadership really wants to do that. I mean, the reality is that the power of the left is it's ascending right now. And there is a fear. There is a fear of the left, and so
100%. Well, and that goes to Johnson I'm sorry. Hakeem is not feared. Pelosi had the ability, and I remember this vividly in 2006. When all the complaining started about Rahm picking House candidates, she went to the Progressive Caucus and the Black Caucus and said, I got his back. Back off. We want the majority. Schumer had Harry Reid sitting over his shoulder, who everybody feared within the Democratic Senate caucus. And so they had the ability to tell the interest groups, we got you, we hear you, we're aligned on the agenda, but you got to stay quiet if we want to win. Jeffries and Schumer, it's the opposite. They both are so afraid of the base. They're so dependent upon them not turning openly to you're out that they're impotent. They're totally impotent.
I want to take. I think there might be a couple of quick questions to take, but one point to make. I heard this a lot, whether I was at the NRCC, the NRSC, or my years at the RNC. People go, well, the party should pick this person. I'm like, That's not, especially on the right, that's not how it works, right? Sometimes the party could say, hey, we'll give you some infrastructure support or something if it's the NRCC. The RNC specifically by rule doesn't generally get involved in stuff. But like the idea that the party is going to go out and do this, can you imagine if you got a phone call right now and said, my name is so-and-so from Washington. I don't want you to run. Like, can you
Wait, but
repeat
that happens all the
it
time, Sean.
Yeah,
It does happen all the time in the I mean, I'm just thinking about the Senate, the past few Senate cycles on the GOP side. I mean, Rick Scott got just completely reamed out by his own party for not telling certain candidates not to run.
Because, but with all due respect, I don't know that they would have cared. Like, that's the thing, is that they go, okay, thanks a lot. Could you say it again so I can get it on tape?
Well,
because if you
Trump
literally said,
I
got a phone call
Trump's
from
operation
Washington
does
saying
it.
don't
Trump's
run.
operation has done it a little bit.
No.
Behind the scenes, they do it politely.
There's a little bit of soft glove stuff where it's like, hey, we'll support you. We'll do this. But I'm not, if you were a grassroots Republican and you literally went out and said, I got a call from Washington, D.C. telling me not to run, the party boss's call, you put that out as a fundraiser and you probably crush it.
That is true. But guess what? If James Blair is the one calling, you're going to have a different reaction.
You're putting it on
in Florida, and guess what? Byron Donald's got a primary. I mean, I'm just saying it's not as bulletproof. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. What I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of people who feel like there's this central office that picks up the phone and calls and be like, that's who we're choosing in this district. That's who we're telling to stay out. Sometimes it can play. Sometimes it doesn't. It just depends on the district and the circumstances, et cetera. So, hey, I know, I think we did have a couple of quick people in the chat. Sean M. Spicer, what is being announced by Sean? I'm being appointed. No, I don't know. It's interesting. Normally we get a pretty good heads up. Do you guys have any clue what's going on?
I don't. I should have sent a text before the show, but admittedly did not.
All right. Apologies, Sally. We will do better, and we will tell you at 3:01.
They don't tell the Democrats ahead of time what's coming.
Right.
Sorry.
All right. We have one more before we jump for the day. What's the turnout versus a great question on that one. So look, special elections are obviously going to be much smaller. I think that roughly, and I'm sure votes are still being absentee. I think they had about 178,000 or 180,000 votes yesterday. You can probably get another 100 out in a general, so it should be closer to 300,000. And in a
I think I saw 38.5 to like 55 or something in the 56, something like that in the general. So it's a
I mean, you're
that's standard in almost every district.
Right, that's normal. And when you look at it, disproportionately is obviously going to be from the rural counties in areas outside of Nashville and Davidson County. So that's not surprising. Anyway,
but the problem is Trump's not on the ballot again.
Right.
So,
and that's always, we've had this problem for 10 years.
The Democrats are fired up as hell.
Right. Right. They were fired up and people have a hard time, especially low propensity voters. They will turn up, turn everything for Donald Trump, but they have a hard time saying, do it for you. So
true in 2018. It was true in 2022.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the word.
And we got to really figure out in the next several months how to tweak it more. The one thing I'll say from some of the people I talked to yesterday, the RNC really did a good job of hitting its early vote number, right? So they got it. They just, the Republicans turn out more proportionally on election day. And that's where, that get out the vote, that GOTV effort has got to get tweaked even more.
Stay tuned.
All right.
Has got interest in that.
All right, guys. Well, let's, we'll all be tuned in at 2:30 to see what the big announcement is. Obviously, tomorrow we'll be back here at 8:30. Rachel, congrats on the newsletter. We'll put it in the YouTube notes if you want to get to Rachel's thing. Obviously, Rachael Bade. There you go. And remember, it's
there it is. Ooh, that's fancy. Look at that.
Yeah, look at that.
And Sean, who do you have tonight? Come on.
Oh my God, thank you. By the way, again, like that conversation I had with Tim Parlatore last night. I learned, like, a lot of times you say, don't ask questions you don't know the answer to. I asked all the questions I didn't know the answer to. And he literally walked through the Uniform Code of Military Justice and what, anyway, I recommend it to anyone. But tonight, Derek Van Orden, former Navy SEAL, current congressman from Wisconsin, will be on to obviously talk, not just, we'll talk Tennessee, we'll talk about the UCMJ and what would have happened in the fog of war. Obviously, remember, it's not just a SEAL, obviously part of Special Operations Command, so he can talk a little bit about that and what he thinks is going on in Venezuela. And then this issue of affordability and healthcare and what we're going to have to see in the next few months coming out of the conference. And just, I think part of it also is the mood. What do these guys think? Because it's amazing to me how many House members, and Rachel, I'll be interested to see what you pick up in the next few days, but like, they're not like happy soldiers right now. A lot of these guys are like, well, and I would just assume what I hear is a lot of them are nervous. And so we'll see how that changes now that they're back. I feel like some of them were worried about Tennessee. Did that reassure them? So, we'll see
The
what
speaker says that he's a mental health counselor half the time.
I bet
is sort
you
of what
it's
he
true.
is.
Well, and I
I
think
will
this
say
is
members of
where,
Congress are often very unhappy.
and I think this is
Job
where
is
for
not
those,
fun
yeah,
this
for
time.
those who don't know, just quickly, that the problem is members sit around and they go to lunch, they talk in the hallways, and this is where the snowball of psychology can build.
Yeah.
Of if like you're grumpy, then I can become grumpy. You're thinking of quitting. Maybe I'm going to think about quit. Like it's like high school. So anyway,
Right.
to be continued. Thank you all for tuning in and enjoy your Wednesday. And we will see you tomorrow at 8:30 a.m.